There we go. All right, so to our presentation. So I made this presentation a few weeks ago, so I did not add Mike to it. I am sorry, but I will let Michelle introduce him. So we are hearing from Life Experiences Inc. in Cary, North Carolina, and we have with us Michele Hile, who's the interim director, and she was nice enough to send me a headshot. So there's a little background information on her, and I will let you take over from here, Michele.
Sure. So I have actually worked with Life Experiences since 2020, as the bio says. Of course, we all know. I started in like January 2020, just working on some grant writing for them, and then, of course, things kind of changed and started evolving with the organization. But I've done some work with them off and on, and then in February I started doing this. Not quite full time, but just 3/4 time, trying to restart programming for them as a transition happened, obviously during the pandemic, which Mike is going to talk about. And Mike Cuomo is our board chair, and he's been with the board, I'm going to say 6 years, Mike?
2017.
5 years. And worked in the financial advising area for many years, recently retired, and just been an incredible volunteer for the organization, as is the entire board. But fortunately, he's our board chair, and he was happy to join us this morning, and he's made the presentation several times. So he's a bit more experienced than I am, but I will be jumping in on occasion and certainly will help answer some questions for everybody. So I'll turn over to Mike.
Well, good morning, everybody. Now I'm very much a novice on Zoom. I've got a presentation. If I move it over to can you see my presentation?
So click on the share screen on the bottom.
Okay.
And then click on advanced.
Hang on a second. Share screen. Advanced setting. Okay, it says host only, all participants, or what do I?
All participants, I think.
Okay.
I didn't see that.
I'm that box. It's still there. It doesn't go away.
Box. Let me see. Which box?
It's the advanced sharing options.
Oh, the advanced sharing options, and then did you click on portion of screen?
Hang on a second.
Oh, there you go.
There you go, Mike.
Is that it? Okay. Yep. Not really sure what I did, but if it worked,
It worked.
I'm thrilled there. So,
There you go.
so everybody can see the presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I've got to just, all right. So let me,
I think if you change your display settings to.
and you're seeing it move now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me just restart. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us. As Michele said, I'm Mike Cuomo. I'm the board chairman this year for Life Experiences. I've been on the board for about 5 years, and been a very, very unique time for us. So we're really grateful to have the opportunity to speak to your group, and for you to get to know us, for us to get your feedback, and obviously for us to help you learn more about us, and probably ask you for some support as we go down the road. Life Experiences serves the intellectually disabled community. So folks with autism, folks with Down syndrome, folks that just with an intellectual disability, slow learning, typically identified in the public school system. I'm sure that, unfortunately, this is so much more prevalent, and I'll go into those statistics as we go into the program. But this is so much more prevalent over the last few years, And so what we have traditionally done is provided an employment opportunity in our facility, our building, where folks with intellectual disabilities were able to bake brownies. They were able to shred paper. They were able to do laundry services, all in our building, all in an employment setting. Tremendously enriching for them. Great opportunity for their families to send their person to a place where they can be appreciated and earn a small amount of money. But nevertheless, as you could imagine, that was just a very, very gratifying experience. And that went on for 40 years, almost. Okay. We were founded about 40 years ago, and we evolved out of families that had children or became adult children with intellectual disabilities. You know, and as the slide says, and I'm going to jump around a little bit because we're a small group, but we can probably make this a little bit more interactive. But employment opportunities so that people felt valued. And again, we had, I would say, to be fair, a lower functioning group, if you will, folks that probably would not have been able to work in mainstream employment. And we probably are all have experience with either family or friends. In my case, I've got a cousin, first cousin, who's autistic, and a niece who's also autistic. They would never be able to work in a mainstream employment setting. And so that was our history. That's what we did. We had about 50 folks that worked for us in Cary at our building. This is a little jumpy. So this, to your right, you're going to see Angie there, and Angie is holding a bunch of brownies. Angie's one of the first people I met when I joined Life Experiences. She worked in the kitchen, and with about 4 or 5 others, supervised by a baker, they baked brownies. This was what we were famous for. If you went to Char Grill up until last year, you would be able to buy our brownies. And this was probably one of the highlights of one of the best products that we had. And we supplied all of the Char Grills pretty much in Wake County, and then several others. COVID changed all this, as you could imagine. And so over the course of time, we actually shut down all of our employment activities at our building, basically because of COVID, and laundry services, all of our subcontracting, our brownie baking, etc. Sad day for us. This was last August, so it's almost been a year. So we had, at the time, at the peak, about 50 individuals with intellectual disabilities that were coming every day. When COVID hit, that number dropped in half, and then eventually it got down to about 7 or 8 folks that were able to come. And of course, their families or their caretakers were responsible for getting them there every day. That became strained, as you can imagine, with COVID. So we experienced an existential threat to our model and our ability to help and serve these folks. So in August, we made some very, very difficult decisions, and we shifted gears. We said that we've got to continue to help these folks and provide some type of enrichment or vocational training for them, but how are we going to do it? If you live in Wake County, and you may have heard of Wake Enterprises, you may have heard of Community Workforce Solutions, you may have heard of Living with Autism. Okay, you may have heard of not Angie's place. I'm going blank on the other one that's popular. And these are places that provide day programs for adults with disabilities. Now, this is different than what we did. We're not talking about employment now, we're talking about enrichment. So the individuals, left to their own devices cannot really work in the mainstream. I know many of you have children. If you have children, imagine that they never graduate, they never go to college, they never leave the home. And so you're tasked with that ongoing care really indefinitely. And of course, that's not good for somebody who goes to high school, which is all provided for up to grade 12. And then at the end of high school has nowhere to go, no social interaction, no enrichment. So these programming facilities are across Wake County. And this is where adults with intellectual disabilities can go to interact, socialize with other folks like them. It's a non-employment model, but they do art, they do sensory, they do music, they do arts and crafts, they build things, they play, all in a very, very organized fashion, all basically sanctioned by the states, and in many cases, they're accredited providers. What we realized was happening as we got into this was that many of these programs, as you could imagine, are expensive to deliver. They are private. So if a family with an adult with disabilities wants to attend a program, it's a daily activity. It's like going to school, okay? But there's tuition, there's the cost and the fee. And as you can imagine, if you're a family that's got 3 or 4 children, and one of them is intellectually disabled, graduated from high school, that's like college tuition that never ends, if you can imagine that. So what Life Experiences did was we sought to develop needs-based scholarships. This is based on financial need for these families to help support their ability to get their person into a day program. And that's how we started. And so we're just about a year into this. We're averaging about 1 to 2 new scholarships per month. We're trying to balance our funding with our ability to generate revenue for scholarships. And our goal is really, we were able as Life Experiences to support 50 lives when we were an employment model. And our goal is first to get to where we can support 50 scholarship recipients and support them and supplement that cost with their family. And so we're well on our way. We're approaching a dozen, and we're doing our first renewal this year for folks who have been on scholarship for the partial year. We're doing all our renewals in July. And so we're really just getting going. Michele has been very, very valuable to us in helping us raise money through grants, through traditional fundraising. And of course, we've got a long history. So folks in Wake County, folks in the Cary area know us. So this community-based programming is really what we're focused on. How can we support these individuals there? Why are they needed? And okay. These statistics might shock you a little bit. They're kind of hard to look at when you see them. 2% of the population has some type of intellectual developmental disability. The average cost of these programs is about $1,300 a month. In a minute, Michelle's going to talk about the innovation waiver. There's 14,000 individuals who are on this wait list to receive money and support from the state, which also comes through Medicaid and the federal government. The wait time is about 10 to 12 years, if you can imagine that, okay? And only about 12,500 people currently receive the waiver. So if you can imagine, there's more people on the waiting list than are receiving the waiver. And estimates for innovations waiver eligible that are not interested or not aware is about 10,000. That's part of our task too, is to make folks aware that the innovations waiver exists. Now, the innovations waiver, it's a funny sounding name. We exist because the innovations waiver isn't easily or readily available to these folks. And that's where we step in. And hopefully we can provide scholarship and close some of that gap until they clear the waiting list, until they get on there. So Michelle's going to take us through that. She's done a good bit of research on this, and this is one of the areas that we're focusing on, how we make sure that folks know about this. And this is, we want you to know about it, so that if you've got a family member, a friend with an intellectually disabled child, that they get on that waiver when they're 2 years old, because they may not receive that funding for 12 years or so. So Michelle, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. So the waiver is part of Medicaid, but it's so these exist in every state, and so every state handles them slightly differently. But basically, the waivers they help pay for these community-based programs and home-based programs. If it's an individual aid, in some cases, it will help pay for that. But it's supposed to, promote the choice and individuals families control over the care that the individual might receive, rather than institutionalizing. A lot of folks, they call it a waiver because some of the same things don't apply for regular Medicaid. The nice thing about it is that it's not simply based on financial need. If someone has the ability to pay, they can still apply for the waiver and get some assistance, because circumstances can change, and family members pass away, and suddenly there's a need for this. So that's another reason that the public schools are now, the special education teachers will encourage families to apply for the waiver as soon as the student has actually been identified as intellectually or developmentally disabled. Just go ahead and get on the list. That way, at the point where you might need the support post-schooling, it may be available to you, because as Mike said, this wait list is 10 to 12 years long in Wake County. And I actually, when I was starting to learn about this program, I thought, okay, so well, maybe, so do families like move over to a neighboring county and get into the program, and then they can access services that way? And the thing is, they might be able to do that, and the waivers are actually distributed by area. There's a provider for the Triangle, there's a provider for each metropolitan area, and then each county. But the waivers are distributed by somewhat population based. However, if you have the waiver in one county in North Carolina and you move to, say, Wake County, you start the process over, which is just horrifying to think about, that you basically have to keep that in mind if you want to relocate, or if your county doesn't offer services, they would have to move to another county to receive services, but start over on this process. So there's a lot of obviously challenges with the waiver program. It's a great program for those who have it, but unfortunately there's just not enough slots, as they call them, and there's a huge demand, clearly. So hopefully that might improve. We'll see what happens. We'll get into that later, as far as things you can do about increasing innovations waiver slots in North Carolina.
And Michelle does a great job on this. She's done a lot of the research. Our task is really, we don't offer the scholarships to the folks that have the waiver, because they are well funded, they are fully funded. Where we step in is these poor folks that are not able to get the waiver, or they're on the waiting list. And so we step in there with a scholarship to partially fund that cost of the monthly programming fees. And so I'll give you some examples, and I think this will make a little bit more sense. These are three real stories, real individuals that you can kind of see how the how it all works. So Julie, for some reason there it is. It's just a little bit of lag there. Julie is autism. She's 25 years old, attends a day program 5 days a week, has the waiver. The waiver funding pays all of her expenses for that programming every day. So her family just transports her to the day program. She's there all day long, 5 days a week. It's like a continuation of school. Julie is medium functioning. She probably could not work out in the community. She's exhausted her schooling, having gone through Wake County schools, and she just enjoys going there and seeing her day. And this is pure enrichment. And this enables her family to continue on employment, not have to worry about daycare for her. And so Julie is one of the lucky ones. Then there's Dave. And Dave is intellectually disabled. He's 35 years old. He also has a physical disability, as you can see. What his family member, brother, began paying $750 a month so that he could attend a day program part-time. His mother's retired and stays at home with him the rest of the day. They needed an additional $500 a month to get him into full-time programming. And his mother and brother know that he'd benefit from that. Instead of him being alone for half of that week or having to be supervised at home, this gives the family a little bit of respite, and it gives them freedom, and it helps with Dave and his interaction. So Dave is a scholarship recipient. Obviously, the names are changed to protect the innocent here, but Dave is a scholarship recipient with us. And there's Danny. Danny, this is sort of one of the heartbreaking stories. Danny recently completed high school. So he's gone through high school for 12 years. He's got Down syndrome. He's very active and very social in school. He's on the waiting list for the innovations waiver. He's been on there for 7 years. So it's going to be another 3 to 5 years before he gets the waiver. But his mother had to quit her job to stay at home with him because his needs are such that he's going to have daily attention. So Danny is a scholarship recipient with us, and he's able now to go to a day program. We're partially funding that. Our scholarships run average of about $450 a month that we were able to supplement. So in this case, his family is probably paying upwards of $600 to $700 for him to now go full-time and continue that socialization process, which he really needs, because when he left high school, it was just devastating. He didn't have his friends. He didn't have a social connection. And so that was just a very meaningful thing. And this is what many of our families are experiencing. And so again, it's some of the scholarships might be $300 a month. Some of them might be $500 a month. We're not really able to do full scholarships, but we can put enough money towards the person that it makes a difference in their life. And that's when we go out there and look for support. We're the only folks that are really doing this right now. We think a new era. We believe we can. There's no limit on the demand for this. If you saw the statistics that I shared with you earlier. So how do you make a difference? How do you help? Certainly donation. We are 501c3. We do accept donations. You can make personal donations on our website. Volunteering and assisting with events and board membership. I'm going to make a big plug for your Rotary Club, as many Rotary Clubs have done in the past, to form a golf team for our annual tournament, which will be in September. I think, Michelle, do you have the date? I know we've recently set a date.
Or 19th.
September 19th. at Preston Country Club. We typically have 40 to 60 foursomes. We'd love to see the Nightdale Rotary Club present a foursome there for that tournament, and we'll certainly get you the information on that. But then also being aware, I'm hoping that as you're hearing this presentation, that you've now become a little bit more aware of this need in our community. There's nothing that we would like to see more than for the waiver program to be expanded or to be less restrictive across county lines, as Michele described, so that we could help more of these folks, and to where you've got access to representatives or folks that are serving as mayors of towns, perhaps, that where you've got that influence in the community to exert that influence, because this is a growing need. And it's really sad, because the last part of what I'm going to tell you, we don't have all the information on, but the General Assembly has now ruled beginning in 2026 that the segregated employment model for adults with intellectual disabilities will no longer be available in North Carolina. So just as Life Experiences used to employ these folks, that I don't want to say it'll be illegal, but it will no longer be in existence. So folks with intellectual disabilities, even if they are higher functioning, will not be able to work in a segregated area. So the folks at Wake County, Wake Enterprises, the folks at Community Workforce Solutions will no longer be able to go to work. They will have to go into the mainstream of employment, and that's going to be very difficult for them. And so when that happens, they're going to really fall back on what we call enrichment, places where they can go to day programs, which is what we're describing here, because employment will be very, very difficult. And without going into it, the major challenge is transportation. How do we get these folks to a job every day when it's one person going to one location? With day program, we can at least, have scholarships to people who are going to a location where they're in a group setting and going to the same place every day. So let me stop there. I'm gonna definitely get this presentation emailed out to you, Jen, and then maybe you can share it with the folks that were here today and the folks that maybe couldn't be here today. But happy to take your questions, and hopefully and really I may have a question or two for you. I know there's two of you that are remote, but how many of you know somebody or a family member or friend with an intellectual disability? So,
yeah, I've got a cousin, and he's probably 45, and he's been living with my aunt. I mean, I guess his whole life, post high school. So I definitely understand the challenge. I know it's been challenging for her.
yeah. Tony, does that person have the waiver? Do you know?
Well, I don't know. This is kind of the first time I'm hearing about the waiver. They actually live in South Carolina, but I don't know. But it's interesting just to hear, what you guys are doing with the community. It's actually very well served. So I actually will make sure I reach out to them, because I'm sure that South Carolina has similar programs.
Yeah, I mean, every state does have a similar program, and again, where we're trying to step in for the young folks that are still in high school or have been identified. We're trying to counsel those parents to get on the waiting list. That's part of our mission as well. But for the folks that unfortunately weren't aware or are waiting still, that's where we're stepping in with financial resources. Anybody else, friends or family members that are in North Carolina?
I don't have any family members that I know of, but I've worked in doctor's offices for years and interacted with many families, and I've never heard of the innovations waiver. Not that they would tell me, perhaps, but this is definitely useful information to have. Thank you.
And I would add in as well, thank you for sharing some new information for me as well. I don't know anyone personally or close enough to where they would share any of this detailed information, but so I appreciate the opportunity to hear about it and hear about what you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, well, no, that's a lot of times it is personal, but if you know somebody that does have that adult with disabilities, please let them know that life experiences exists. All of our contact information is on the presentation, and have them reach out to Michelle. Michelle does our initial intakes and really starts the counseling process with the families. And again, we are just now matching what we're taking in terms of donation and grant money. And we just were awarded a grant from the town of Cary, again, I believe for $6,000. We are able, again, it's averages about $500 a month. So it's $6,000 donation from a grant or something. That's almost a scholarship for a full year for one of our folks. We also earn money from the lease and the rental on our building, which also funds a good many scholarships. But we do hope to be, at 50 or so in the next year or two. And so we need your help to get the word out. We need folks to apply. So we want to know where the need is, and then we also need the funding as well. So grateful to talk to your group today. And we're always available. We'll come out in person if that's the case when you guys start to meet in person. But we'll send you that information in email. And again, thank you for having us this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to stop recording here.